You're watching part 6 of the Rapid Developer walkthrough. If you haven't seen part 1, click here. If you're completely new to Mendix, check out the link in the description to create a Mendix account. Our app can now display course listings which contain the course duration. When a teacher creates a training event for a particular course and sets the start date, it would be great if our app could automatically fill out the end date. In order to do this, we need to set up a microflow and link it to a widget on the training event form. The microflow will be triggered by input widgets, which means we have to think about when the microflow is triggered. In the training event _new edit page, double-click on the start date input widget. Open the Events tab. We need to set the onChange event to call a microflow because we want to trigger the microflow after the user has finished making changes to the start date. Remember, we need the microflow prefix, entity, and operation. In this case, the prefix for onChange is OCH. A good name is OCH_training event_calculate end date. When calculating the end date, the course is important, so we need to follow the same steps. Let's take a look at the microflow. You can see the training event input parameter, which represents the training event that the end user is currently creating or editing. Now, let's build the microflow. Drag the change object activity to the microflow and double-click on it. Remember, we are changing the training event object. Set the action commit to no. Commit means the activity will store the changes to our app database. Set refresh in client to yes. Refresh in client means any changes the user makes will immediately be visible. Remember that the microflow needs to set the correct end date when the user selects the course and start date. Next, you'll use the expression editor to write a microflow expression to calculate the end date. Click inside the expression editor and press Ctrl space. Type add days until you see something pop up in the list. Select it and press enter. Now add the parentheses. The function should appear red because there's nothing in the parentheses. See the red X error under the expression editor to discover the correct format for the add days function. We will use the training event start date as the date and time value, and use the course duration as the integer value. There's just one problem. Since the microflow is modifying a specific training event, that means the course duration attribute is out of scope. In other words, we need a special activity in our microflow to retrieve the course duration. When you need your microflow to access data that's out of scope, use a retrieve activity. Set the source to by association to retrieve both objects that are temporarily saved within the app and to retrieve objects that are stored in the database. Set the source to from database to retrieve only objects that are stored in the app's database. Now we need access to course attributes. Let's finish that at day's microflow expression. Every variable starts with a $sign. Select the right variable from the drop-down menu. Access the training event attributes by typing /. Now we have the date and time argument. It's time to set the second argument as the course duration. Now let's run our app to test our changes. Oh no, we need to troubleshoot an error. You will find your app's red error messages in the console. We can see that the error was from our microflow we just configured. Open the microflow and right-click on the first activity. We want the microflow to pause after it passes the first activity, so we add a breakpoint. Go back to the app and refresh the browser and test the app again. The activity with the red border is the activity the app paused on. In the debugger window, click Step Over to go to the next activity. Use the Variables window to see if you can figure out what's going wrong. The course duration was retrieved successfully, but the start date value is empty. If the microflow runs without all the necessary variables, then the app will crash. Before we fix this, click Continue in the debugger window to tell the microflow to continue running and finish. In order for the end date calculation to work, we need both course duration and the start date. We need to know both of these variables before we calculate the training event's end date. Let's make sure that our microflow can check for both conditions before the change object activity. We can check for conditions using decisions. Check if the user provided a start date. Give a self-explanatory caption. From the tip of the decision diamond, drag an arrow downwards to end event. Now repeat these steps again to check if a course name was selected. Right-click on the first activity and click Remove Breakpoint. Now, the app will no longer pause and be shown in the debugger when the microflow gets triggered. Run the app locally and schedule a training event. Oh no, if an event lasts one day, we don't really want our end date to be an entire 24 hours later. Let's edit the microflow and the add days function, so that courses that last one day can start and end on the same day. Let's test the changes. It's time to commit our work. Open the Changes pane below the editor. Remember to summarize what you did and then select the appropriate user story. Teachers need to see the number of trainees who registered for their training event, so we need to add the attribute to the training event entity. Find the domain model and add the attribute. We expect multiple trainees may register at similar times, and teachers may check the total number of registrations in real time. So we will store this value in the app database. Now let's format the training events overview page to show the total number of registrations. Now, whenever someone registers for a training event, we need to set the total number of registrations integer. Go to the registration form and open the properties of the Save button. Change the on-click behavior to call a microflow. Remember to name your microflow appropriately. Proper naming convention is prefix underscore entity underscore operation. Open your new microflow. Let's replicate the default save behavior of the Save button. Add a commit activity to the microflow. We want to see this data right away, so set refresh and client to yes. Next, add a close page activity after the commit. This will close the registration form page after the user clicks the Save button. Now we need to count the number of registrations. We need training events to be within scope, so add a retrieve activity at the start of the microflow. Set the source to by association and select the registration training event association. Since we don't want our user interface to change, set refresh in client to know. Now we need to retrieve associated registration objects that are stored in the app database. Let's count the number of committed registration objects. Counting is done with the aggregate list activity. We want to store the value of count in the total number of registrations variable. Type control space and shows $count. We want these changes to be immediately visible to all users, so we set commit and refresh in client to yes. Let's run the app locally and test our changes. It's time to create an object event handler. You will need to know 3 things. Which object-related event to listen for, when to execute, and which microflow to run. Object event handlers listen to the app waiting for events to occur. You can connect these object event listeners to microflows you want triggered. Let's create a microflow to update the count in the event that a registration gets deleted. The microflow name will need a prefix based on the time and event chosen. Let's get rid of some activities we don't need. Add object event handlers in the domain model from the entity the event happens to. You can specify whether the event handler listens before or after a specific type of event. You must connect the event handler with a microflow you made earlier. An entity with a lightning bolt means there is at least one event handler attached to that entity. For now, let's commit the new functionality to the team's server and set the user story to done. This is the perfect time to see what the Mendix Assist logic bot can do. Duplicate the ACT_registration_save microflow and delete all the activities. Click on the blue dot to access the logic bot. You can specify the activity, entity, and more by typing it into the search tool. If your microflow is looking lopsided, then highlight the entire microflow. Right-click on any element and choose Distribute horizontally to realign the microflow. Now you know how much faster you can be with the logic bot.